right.
Okay, we're recording. So, the focus of this meeting today are the changes to the rules. So I have not tried to tell you every place you're going to lose a point. I've tried to say, here's the additions or deletions or changes to the existing rules. So I went and I compared the 2020 rule book to the 2025. I looked at the synopsis that was put out by USCA and DVG, and Ann Camper had put one together for her club. So I kind of looked at some other people's materials as well. And I met with a couple other judges, Christina and Dave, and we went through them. So that, you know, I'm pretty confident that what is in here is accurate, but I will say it would appear that the 2025 rules were brand new and completely reorganized and then retranslated. So even sections that didn't change had word changes, which made it really hard to find every single change. So I would also say I'm confident I've missed things, little things most likely. But if anybody's aware of anything I've missed, please let me know. We can always add changes to the slides later. And I'll probably add it to the end of the slides since it won't be what's in the presentation that we put up on the website. So it was a pretty extensive rewrite. It was not a minor set of changes. There's whole sections that have been added about the FCI obedience titles, which we're not going to focus on because I don't think anyone's offering those. Although maybe some people may. Is anybody aware if anyone's offering those FCI obedience only titles? I think we can, as clubs, choose to do that. I just don't know if anybody is.
Not that I know of, Dan.
Okay. Okay. I think maybe Christina said she knew of some club that might be doing it. So the rules are in there, but that's not what we're going to focus on because I don't think that's what our membership is interested in. And they were not in the IGP rules in 2020. So they must have been in some other rule book and they merged those books. Okay, so next slide. Oh, and you can put that in like presentation mode. And then you just like click through.
Okay, so where's that?
I think it's like file present. Does anybody know how you put it in presentation mode? File.
Chris, if you go to the bottom of
Oh no.
If you go to the bottom of the page, or like if you highlight, let me just see. There should be like a little,
I think it's under view mode. No, view slideshow.
Okay, so where do I go? What do I have to click, Dana?
Click view, like upper left-hand corner, view.
Upper left.
Yeah, and then
right here. See search, new slide.
Above there.
Can you see up here?
Well, your menu.
Oh, up here?
Like mine. It's like where you would see, no, I mean, whatever. It just doesn't look like mine. Does anybody know? Like it's just an entire menu.
Check the top icon on the right hand side.
Top icon. This?
No.
Show the menus, yeah.
Those four little icons on the right hand side. All the way to the right, more down.
Okay, this is covering up what I'm gonna need to look at. Okay.
I think there's something covering your menu.
Templates, building blocks.
No, if you go up where you were on that little arrow, upper right. Yeah, right. There, click it. Show the menu. There, now go to view, upper left, view.
I don't even know what you're looking at, Dana.
Under where it says IGP rule changes 2025.
Okay.
Upper left, there's view.
I'm upper, I'm left.
I see your cursor on the right. Go to the left.
Left, I'm sorry, the other left.
Yep, view. Go up.
Got it.
Slideshow. It's the second one down. There. Then it'll take up the whole screen and people won't be seeing everything on your screen. There you go. Okay. And then I think you just probably click the right arrow or scroll your mouse. There we go. Okay. So the preamble had tons of rule changes and they were not trivial. They were a little bit substantive to what the authors believe IGP is about. But those aren't rule changes and I'm not going to cover them here, but you may want to read through that yourself. So you can go to the next. Okay, this one seemed important to me, to a very small set of people, which would be the trial secretaries, that now it is mandatory that a trial secretary must bring any breaking of the rules to the judge's attention. So if the judge isn't around and the secretary sees somebody abuse their dog or give their dog performance enhancing drugs or something of this nature, they have an affirmative duty to report. And that was not in the old rule book any place I could find it. So I think that's an important thing for people to be aware of. But I guess if anybody has questions as we go through here, go ahead. Okay, so go to the next one then. It sounds like maybe different judges have allowed or not allowed vests to be worn. And this is some kind of a clarification that you can wear a tight, normally fitting vest that doesn't have protruding pockets and attached objects during a trial. But you can't wear things that would contain your treats or your toys, like aprons and belly bags. And there may be other regulations for bigger events, which has probably already been happening, I would guess. That's all. There's a little addition here that wasn't there before, which I'm sure is because some judge tried to punish a trial participant for not participating, and then the person objected to it, or, you know, I'm sure there's some backstory here, but it turns out that the trial participants should adhere to local animal and welfare laws and exhibit appropriate behavior for the location, spectators, and other participants. So I guess know your audience.
Under what penalty, Dana?
It does not say.
Okay.
I suppose you would be disqualified if somebody felt you hadn't obeyed if the judge felt you hadn't obeyed the animal welfare laws, or if your behavior was inappropriate.
Okay.
But they might just issue a warning. I'm sure it's at the judge's discretion. And it probably already was. I think there was probably already rules in place that would have covered that, right? But I assume when somebody bothers to write it in the rule book, they're clarifying something so they can more clearly enforce some kind of guideline, right?
I would assume so.
Mm-hmm. I don't have the backstory. I can only guess.
Okay.
Okay.
Next slide.
Yep. Okay, there is now a section that says you have to have track layers. It always said you had to have a track layer, not the handler, for, you know, tracking in IGB 2, 3, the various tracking titles. Now it says at trials, events, and championships, it is advised to use certificated track layers. And I did talk to Dave and Christina about this, and they said USCA does have a certified track layer program. AWMA does not, but it sounds like a good idea. It might be something we as a group want to talk about doing. So especially when you're doing the national level events, to have people who've been trained consistently to lay tracks correctly, it seems reasonable.
I think DVG has a certified track layer program too.
That would make sense since they're kind of a subset of the German club, and that's probably where this is coming from. But I'm not personally familiar with it, but it makes sense. And I don't know that we have the resources to pursue that, but it could make sense long term. That's all.
All right. You guys have any other questions? You guys can feel free to just pop in whenever you need to.
Yeah, you can just talk. I don't think we have such a big group that it would be an issue.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, there have been some changes in the titles that are offered. They eliminated the first three, the IGPV, the IFHV, and the IGPZTP, which was that breed test. Those have been eliminated, and then they added an IFH3, but we'll get to the tracking. Really, the IFH3 is really what the IFH2 used to be. And the IFHV is now called the IFH1. Basically, I don't know that those are 100% identical, but it's the gist of it. They've also changed the age on the GPR 1 through 3. Now the dog has to be 18 months old. And they've added an IGPFH. Christopher, what was that called before when you did the 2 tracks on 2 different days?
The IPOFH
Yes. So I think it's the same
or
thing.
IGPFH. Yeah.
Well, so maybe they just added FCI to the beginning.
I think I got. I don't know.
The names changed slightly. I'm not great at tracking that. And there was one place in the rule book where it said it was the IGPIFH, and another place where it said it was the IGPFH. So there's definitely a few little inconsistencies in those rules that I imagine get cleaned up over time when people find them. Okay, that's I think
Right.
this is probably not so much a rule change on the females as it is a clarification that probably judges were handling it this way in the endurance trial, the AD, the female in heat must start last and at a clear distance so as not to disturb the other dogs. I would imagine most judges were already doing that. This distance is to be decided by the judge. Now, this thing about pregnant bitches is new. I'm pretty sure I did not find this anyplace in 2020. Pregnant bitches may only take part in FCI, BHVT, and all FCI, FH, article search, and endurance trials up to and including the 27th day after mating. So I do not think there was a limitation like this before. After the 27th day after mating, the bitch is allowed to participate only if a veterinary confirmation is presented that the dog is not pregnant. So your pregnant females after day 27 are not competing in Schutzhund. So that's kind of important.
Okay.
And the judge may not know that at the point of entry, but if you're advertising it all over Facebook, people are certainly going to be aware, and you kind of open yourself up to problems if if you've not
If she has some
that date
puppies in the
carefully.
next month or so.
Yeah, you've got like 4 weeks after mating.
Okay.
Okay. There was a lot more detail added to this section about anti-doping, and it's not just intentionally performance enhancing things. It's also dogs that might be sick and are being given medications that could affect their work. So if your dog is on medication before you're going to trial, you should read through this carefully and make sure you understand what is and is not allowed. It says a doping test can be performed. I'm not aware of that happening. Is anybody aware of that happening?
No.
But
The FMBB last year,
did they?
they tested one dog.
And what was that based on? Some sort of rumor, or the person said I did give them some kind of medication, or what?
I mean, depending on who you ask, there was like some foul play
Okay.
at hand. The only dog that was tested was Yanni Bohm's dog, and it also just so happened that he had the scores that were being disputed, or he was in the scoring controversy afterwards.
Okay.
So it was just one of those things that that can't quite be pinned as strange, but it's not hard to look at it and think it's strange either.
Well, so what, if it helps, this is Trisha. They announced prior that they would draw straws of the top 3 dogs and do a drug test, a doping test afterward, do a urinalysis or whatever. So, so that's what they did. They brought all 3 teams, they drew straws, and Yanni's Yanni was the one who drew to do the urinalysis. So it was, again, announced prior, and all of the competitors were made aware that that was going to happen. It coincided, unfortunately, with other issues that made it political, but it was pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Saying that we're gonna do a doping test at random is basically what they were saying.
No, they were saying that of the top 3 dogs, they were going to draw straws, and one of the top 3 dogs was going to do a doping test.
But not completely at random. Okay, so I guess
So, yeah,
everybody on alert, you better be prepared for a doping test.
yes.
Okay,
And it was a urinalysis.
I think so. I don't think it was blood work. The veterinarian was there, but I understand that it was urinalysis.
Okay. Okay, but I guess they're putting us on alert. Don't use performance enhancing drugs on your sport dogs.
Well, and the drug list is fairly extensive, and includes a number of drugs that
May or may not be.
folks in the United States, would use for anti-inflammatories or something like that. So, just really look at that drug list.
Well, I did not see a drug list in the rule book. Where is it?
It might be worth asking FCI for clarification on that list, or it may very well be that each organization is coming up with their own.
Okay.
So that's a good question.
It's an important thing for all of us to be thinking about. And I know in some cases, things that you would not think of as performance enhancing are considered such. Okay, so the vaccine regulations, I don't think this changes for us. I did talk to Ann Camper about that, because it says the participating dogs have to have the vaccinations according to the national regulations of the NCO, which is the National something organization, proven by a dog passport or vaccine certificate. I don't think AWDF is going to require more than rabies. So I don't think for us that's going to be a change, but it might be in other countries. And certainly if you're going to travel, there may well be additional vaccine requirements. So something to be paying attention to if you're going to travel someplace else. Okay, next. This is a whole section on aggression, and it specifies dog aggression or aggression towards humans, and you're going to be disqualified if your dog exhibits aggression towards dogs and humans, which I do not think is a change. But there is a big change here, which is that this is prompting the national organizations to track these cases of dogs that have been DQ'd due to aggression, so that the judges get a notification ahead of a trial that a dog is entered in your trial that was previously dismissed due to aggression and is going to have to repeat the BH. And then the judge can make some adjustments to the whole system of how that dog is being tested to have less risk to the other competitors, because we already know the dog had a previous aggression problem. This to me seems like a good thing, but maybe logistically a little complicated, and I'm not sure we're really set up for it, but I hope we will be. And I had talked to Ann Camper about it, and she is aware of it. So the only way this is going to work is if the AWDF tracks this, because we're going to have lots of dogs entering our trials from other breed clubs. And so if AWMA tracks it, I mean, it could help a little bit, but that's not really the right way to handle it. It should really go through the AWDF. So all the different clubs get notice, no matter which club the dog had previously trialed at.
Okay.
Oh, and it was also an important note. The attacked dog is not to be sanctioned, even if this dog responds and defends itself. So if your dog is attacked by another dog and is, not starting the fight, they should not have to go through this process. It's the dog that's actively aggressive.
Finally.
Right.
Yeah, I think that is a clarification, right?
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that's a good thing.
Hey, Dana, let's go back to the drug stuff, because I just found something.
Good, yeah.
So I just did little quick search, and just on a cursory glance, it looks like the substances that the banned substances are the following: substances affecting the nervous or gastrointestinal, cardiovascular, and musculoskeletal systems.
Yep. Where'd you-
Analgesics, anti-inflammatories, antibiotics, antivirals, antifungals,
Wow.
diuretics, muscle relaxants, respiratory stimulants, anabolic steroids, corticosteroids, endocrine secretions, and other synthetic homologs.
That's a laundry list.
That's a lot of stuff.
Where did you find it? It's not in the rule book.
My best friend, Chat GPT.
Oh my God. It could be a
It gives all the sources, though. I looked at the
hallucination.
sources.
Probably a hallucination. Okay. Place on the
Pardon me?
website, probably.
Yeah, it's all over the place. Actually, this is coming from newspaper article and the FCI website, and the rules for the VDH and agility also goes by the same rules.
So be careful, I guess.
And I'm not standing by that. I'm just letting you guys know that, on a cursory glance, it's a pretty long list of pretty normal stuff that we, give to our dogs. So you might want to watch out if you're not here in the US.
You don't think we're going to be testing in the US?
Who's going to pay for it?
I'm
It's
not.
a lot of money, and to have it done before the end of the weekend is kind of.
Yeah, I'm sure it's very expensive, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I think we covered the aggression. We're good with that. Okay. I thought this one was super important and it was missed by the other clubs, I think. I don't think USA or DVG noted this. You cannot have toys at the awards. And it sounds like maybe this was already happening at some of the bigger events. But now it's specifically saying that a dog must be guided by the handler at the award ceremony without wearing or providing a motivational object.
Great.
And I guess if that means if you pull your hat off and use it to play with your dog, you were wearing a motivational object. It does not say I have to disqualify you, but it seems to imply that. Because there's no other possible sanction at that point. So I would be very cautious with that one. And also as a judge, I would say if you feed your dog a treat, is that a motivational object or is that treat? It doesn't specify. Like I would think a motivational object is a toy, but if you're starting to throw food around and your dog's jumping and clacking and chasing, I would probably say that's a motivational object, not a treat. And maybe some judges are going to read a motivational object to include treats. Any thoughts? Anyone?
I got a thought, Dan. Well, for me. I mean, I've been in a situation where people are throwing their motivational item around on the field, and it's causing a big disruption towards the other dogs.
Sure. There's a reason it's here.
Pardon me?
There's a reason this is here.
Oh, I thought you said that person is here. I'm like, what are you doing? No,
better.
Yeah, there's a reason why, and I could see dogs fighting over objects and stuff like that. It's just
absolutely. I mean, I can see why this is here. I'm just different judges may read this in different ways, and if you want to be clear, if you can bring a little food out there, you better ask.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. The TSB evaluation has been very quietly eliminated. I had to hunt, and I'm like, where did it go? What's going on? It's gone. So I'm pretty sure that's not a mistake.
Yep.
So there's no longer pronounced courage. Just dogs with good points. That's all.
All right.
I don't know if that's exciting or not exciting, but I thought it was a noteworthy change. I think this is clarification of rules that are probably already being enforced. You're allowed to use the verbal commands that you want. It's not, you don't have to only use English commands, but they have to be normal, short spoken words. They must be the same for the same task. And very long spoken words are rated as help, even if in your language, you know, you've got 20 syllables for the command, you cannot use that in Schutzland. So you're going to get pointed for that. And I think judges probably already were doing that.
Do you think that includes volume of commands? Like how loud the people are shouting? I've seen people losing points for that in 2 trials now, where the judge is like, no.
Shouting is help myself as a judge, but I don't think it has anything specifically in the rule book about the volume.
Okay.
But I think you'd bump into a bunch of judges who say shouting is help.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it's just a matter of where's the line between a loud command and a shout.
Yeah.
What the competitors out there, are you seeing that as well quite a bit? I guess maybe that's a no.
All right.
Okay. I thought this was interesting and probably reasonable. And it only kind of comes into play in an edge case. If your dog is chasing game at the beginning of a track and tracking is terminated, you're going to fail because you will not have gathered up enough points to proceed. So you will be out of the mix as far as passing a title. But you will be able to continue into your obedience and protection and at least participate. And in fact, you will be obligated to participate. So I guess it's going to affect you whether or not you have the points to pass. But if your dog starts chasing game on the last leg and you can't get them to start the track again, you may still have enough points. You might have your 70 points and be able to pass the trial. So chasing game is no longer a DQ, it's a termination, and that will change how that plays out for you if you've got a mouse hunting dog.
Okay.
I pasted this entire thing in here and it's probably worth reading. I think it's really nice. This is an addition and it's new language that is kind of clarifying what judges are looking for. And the reason I think it's so important is because I want people to understand you are not going to get an excellent rating on an exercise if your dog doesn't have these elements in their behavior. So expressive behavior, self-confidence. Particular attention is to be paid to expressive behavior by the dog during the judging and by awarding the respective score. The dogs must show that they want to do the required exercise for the handler and not show that they're being pressured to do it. Close observation of the entire dog, such as facial expression, ear and tail position, tense muscles, unnatural movement, excessive breathing rate, excessive salivation or hectic behavior, etc., contribute to the evaluation. Negative reactions after the delivery of verbal commands leads to deductions. So they want to see that the dog wants to work and is not showing stress or pressure about the work. I think that's been being judged for quite a while, but I think they've really clarified a lot of the things that a judge is looking at, because I don't think in the previous rule book it talked as much about it. We're looking at their facial expression, their ear and tail position, tense muscles, excessive panting and breathing and salivating. Those kinds of things look like a dog is stressed. Then joyful, motivated work. The dog should show motivated work. The willingness to work and to show a performance is top priority. So if your dog doesn't look super excited to be there, you're not going to be in the excellent. Concentration, attention. The dog must be concentrated on the handler during the entire routine without showing an extremely abnormal body or head posture. I know this has been a debate for a while about the abnormal head posture. And obviously, I'm sure judges have very different interpretations of what that means, but it is definitely codified by this language here. Harmony of the team. The presentation should be harmonious. The dog must be able to follow the handler in a normal sequence of steps for the dog. I guess it's getting back to normal body movements as well. technical correctness / position. In addition to expressive behavior and a harmonious performance, attention must be paid to a technically correct execution. The exercise should be performed clearly and according to their description. So read how the exercises should be performed and make sure you're training for that. Acceptance execution. The dog should always accept the command immediately and perform the exercises without delay. So they want a quick response that doesn't look pressured. I thought this was better language than we had previously. What do you guys think?
It's definitely much better.
Okay. Yeah. And I think it will help. Trisha's constantly telling her people, like, your dog has to be happy or you're not going to get an excellent. Yeah, every judge is going to interpret these rules different. But it's a lot clearer than it was before, that your dog better not show pressure. They better not show stress. They really need to look like they want to be there.
Okay.
Any comments or questions? Okay. I like this one a lot as well, so I pasted the whole thing in here. The clarification on scoring. There are primary and secondary items in the evaluation. In order to be able to evaluate the performance in a more differentiated way, some exercises are divided into sub-areas, which are then to be considered separately. The evaluation shall also distinguish between the primary part and the secondary part of an exercise. The primary part should be weighted higher in order to get to the core of the exercise, taken into account accordingly. So for an example, on the retrieve over the hurdle, the primary items are powerful free jumps and correct execution of the retrieve. The secondary items are the execution of the initial and final basic positions. So if you're worrying about where to spend your training time, focus on the primary items. That's where you're going to be losing bigger points. If your dog isn't showing that power over the jumps and the speed to and from the retrieve and the, the quiet mouth and all of that, focus your efforts on that before you focus a lot of effort on your basic positions. Any comments or questions? Okay. My shade is moving. Let me just rotate slightly. Here we go. Okay. Commands. For the most part, what the rule book says about extra commands is that the first additional verbal command is -1.5 points. It did used to say satisfactory. I think -1.5 points is a lot clearer to everybody. The second additional verbal command is -2.5 points. So I read that to say, if you repeat the command sit, you lose 1.5 points. If you say sit, sit, now you've got 2.5 points. You say it a third time, the exercise is 0. So I do think people need to pay a lot of attention to that one, because you could take a little bit more time between the first and the second command, and maybe you don't need that third command. You do not want to get to your third command. It's not going to do you any good. I think that's also suggestive that you'd be better off with some body help than extra verbal commands. And then the rule book says if the dog enters the exercise without a verbal command, I read that to mean if the dog starts the exercise without a verbal command, the partial exercise is to be judged unsatisfactory, which we usually say insufficient. And then in other places, it says if the dog starts the exercise without a verbal command, the exercise is to be judged with -2 points. For a retrieve, this can be up to -2 points, which probably means the judge could be a little more lenient on a retrieve. But any other places where the dog starts the exercise without the command, it's definitely -2 points. So if your dog sits without you having said sit, you're out 2 points. So if you know your dog is going to anticipate that sit, I'd sit them at 8 steps, not 12, if you're looking for handling advice, right? So get your command in there a little early so your dog does not start the exercise and lose you 2 points. Does everybody track that?
What about on the out command in the protection, as far as the,
It's kind of
if
the
you
sense that you're
feel?
done if you get 3 out commands.
Well, I mean, what if your dog anticipates the out and he outs and you don't say anything? And it's just an automatic out.
I would say that's probably minus 2 points per what this says. But
Okay.
different judges may read that differently in protection and say your dog lacks courage, and it might be more than that.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay. Right.
Is that a general rule, or was that only in obedience?
I searched through the rule book and it seemed to say it in every section, but then it did get a little squirrely because in tracking it also said that extra commands are minus 1.5 points. But judging tracking is always a little bit different than the other phases because you have a continuous exercise. So if your dog had an extra command to souk on the first leg, minus 1.5 points. On the second leg, probably another minus 1.5 points. But if you said souk, souk, maybe it's minus 2.5 points total instead of minus 3 points total because it happened on that same leg. But different judges have different ideas about how you judge those tracking points. So some people might take 2.5, even though the extra commands were on 2 different legs, and another person might take 1.5 for each extra command and make it, total minus 3 points. And it seemed to say it both ways in the tracking section. So I would say that will be up to judges' discretion. This was the whole section that was added about the international companion dog tests, which I'm pretty sure is the same as the videos I've seen on the internet of FCI obedience. Does everybody agree with that? The titles keep changing names, and I don't know what the previous titles were. I just saw the videos of border collies doing amazing obedience. Is anybody clear on that?
I don't know, Dana. It seems like it'd be just the obedience portion of Schutzen or IGP or whatever.
They are slightly different exercises and point values. I don't think they are identical. But I don't know if they're the same as the stuff I had seen on videos 10 years ago or something of dogs with, super flashy obedience.
Right.
I'm not sure. But these have been added to the rule book. I don't know if they're new or if they were in some other rule book and we've just merged rule books because I didn't get to attend the judges meeting. So I don't know the history behind it. I thought maybe someone else would. Okay. They're there. And I think that means we can offer them. I liked the picture on the BH so much I threw it in here for everybody. I think it makes it really clear. It's that, middle part of the image where it shows you start, you go out your minimum of 50 paces, you make your bout, you've got 10 to 15 normal, 10 to 15 running, 10 to 15 slow, 10 to 15 normal, you do a halt and then straight into the group without a turn. And so you can see we've eliminated the turns that you typically have after the second leg back. We don't do the right turn, the second about, or the left turn. We've also eliminated the off-leash heeling. The rule book does not specify where the leash comes off, but we, Dave, Christina, and I believe it should be after the group because we're probably leaving the leash on in the group to keep things safe and under control. And then you don't need your leash off until you do the motion exercises. So I think you may come across judges who read that differently and tell you to take the leash off at the halt before you go into the group. But it's my opinion that you should leave your leash on in the group and then take it off when you come back to do your sit out of motion. The rules have really clarified that you are allowed up to 5 seconds of praise between exercises and the dog can leave basic position. However, you have 1 command to get your dog back into basic and ready to do the next exercise. So if you don't have a really great call back to heel, I would be careful about allowing your dog to leave basic. You're going to lose a lot of points. Obviously, as a handler, you get to make choices. Maybe it's worth it to have your dog fired back up for the next exercise and you'll take that extra command point. That's up to you, but just be aware of that one.
And Dana, is this only in the BH or is that in?
It's also in IGP1, I believe.
Okay. Is there praise allowed in the higher levels?
I think not in 2 and 3. We'll get in the obedience changes. I have that documented. I'm pretty sure it's just the 1 and the B.
Uh-huh.
You can do that extra praise, but there still is praise allowed. It's just not as exuberant as what this is specifying. I mean, this sounds like your dog can jump up and down next to you and bark, potentially do whatever it wants for 5 seconds while you're praising it in some way. And then you can tell them heel, assume you're basic for the next exercise, and go.
Got it.
They've shortened the long down to only 10 meters, and you can stand sideways to your dog. So the BH is faster and easier in the obedience phase. I think that's a good change myself. So, and I think it even had some language that specified the BH is there for more of like a temperament test.
Mhm.
Which is how we did it many, many moons ago. I mean, they had all the healing and the obedience, but the judges didn't care as much about how correct it was. So they've made it simpler. So hopefully you don't have as many people failing a BH just because they can't do 10 minutes of healing in a row, which is quite a lot, really.
Mhm.
Okay. In general, the changes to tracking, I thought this was fairly interesting, and it may be a reflection of how much harder it is to find tracking grounds now. It says in all examination levels, changing terrain and path crossings are also possible. Is that bird driving you guys nuts? No? Okay.
Mhm.
If the bird gets out of control, I can go inside.
You can barely hear it, Dana.
Okay, you don't even hear it. I don't know what my mic picks up. Okay, so the changing terrain and path crossings, I'm sure people probably aren't going to try to do that because you don't really want your Schutzhund dogs to have to deal with it if you don't have to. But if you have small fields and the terrain changes a little bit, that is allowed and nobody can complain about it. I also liked that it specified a slightly crooked article indication is plus or minus 30 degrees and is not faulty. That makes it super clear. If your dog rolls a hip and is slightly crooked, that is definitely not faulty. They have to be 30 degrees, which is pretty significant. It is not necessary for the dog to fix at the article. I read that to mean stare. I should have noted that that's my interpretation because the plus or minus 30 degrees above is actually straight out of the rule book. That stare is my interpretation of what fix means. I'm pretty sure they mean your dog does not need to stare at the article. So apparently some judges were taking points for that, and it was never in the rule book that they should, but somebody must have thought so. It is irrelevant how the handler holds the leash with one hand, with two hands, whether he or she changes the leash to the other hand, at what height he or she holds the leash, etc., if this does not interfere with the dog's work. So as long as it doesn't look like you're causing the dog to change his behavior, you're fine to move your leash around hand to hand if you need to. For small dogs, the prescribed normal loose-fitting collar may be replaced by another suitable collar. I don't think you can buy a fur saver in Chihuahua sized or maybe even Beagle sized. So you can put on a flat collar or a choke chain or something like that. For each extra command, there is a mandatory deduction of 1.5 points. Oh, this is where in the tracking, it had said it that way. But it also had another section where it said it the other way. The second one's 2.5 points. So a slight difference there, but I don't think it's too significant. Okay, more general changes. If the dog is committed immediately to tracking at the start and follows the scent path with a deep nose and makes an excellent first leg, the judge will not mention in his evaluation that the dog should have taken more time to identify or take the scent. Personally, I'm very thrilled with that one. I never thought that made sense. And the great tracking dogs, you have to try to convince them to hang around at the scent pad because they know what they're doing. So I thought that was a great change myself. If the handler gives the verbal command to start before the flag, there's a deduction of -1 point. So wait until the flag to give the command. In this case, the dog was started without a command at the starting flag. If the dog starts sniffing before the flag without a verbal command of the handler, this is not faulty. So let them sniff their way up to the flag, but wait to say souk until they're at the flag. The handler is not allowed to help the dog at the start or restart by indicating the direction of the track. Deduction for this help is -2 points. So I'm assuming that means pointing it out. I think we're all going to stand in the direction we think the track goes. So I don't think it's about how you're positioned. I think it's about people who are pointing. The urinating or defecating on the track now is -8 points. In the old rule book, there was latitude. It said -4 to 8 points. If you earned an IFH1 prior to 2025 rules, then it is equal to an IFH2 as a prerequisite for IFH3. Okay, so I like the sketch a lot on how to point the articles. Everybody should study it so you know what do you really care about if your dog's not perfect on his indications. So article number 7, Chris, you want to put your cursor by 7? Oh, is that my cursor? Oh yeah, yours is tiny, but there you go. That's your perfect indication. And there's a space between 6 and 7. I would argue that that space is all 7, but some other judge might say it's all 6. So there's, it's not perfect, but there's a lot more clarity here that position number 7 is perfect. Position number 6 is a half-point loss. Positions number 8 and 9 are also a half-point loss. And then you get into 4, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4 are worse. So it's giving a pretty clear idea of how many points you're going to lose based on where that article is positioned to your dog. And I'd say, yeah, I'd say 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 are all pretty good indications. You're not losing very much, and then it gets worse from there. So just be aware of that. And I don't know if judges are going to strictly follow that or not, but I like that it's drawn so judges have good guidelines and we can try to be more consistent.
No touching of the article.
Well, they show the dog, go back, Christopher, like number 4, your dog's paws on their article, and they're saying
What if it's
point and a half.
What if he's at number 7? If it's perfect indication, but he's got his snout on it.
His snout on it.
His nose, yeah.
There is not a specific point loss in the rule book. It'll be up to the judge's discretion. How much do they think the dog is disturbing it, or do they think the dog is indicating it? I would imagine you bump into both scenarios, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct. Discretion of the judge.
So
Sorry?
what's the point loss, Dana, for the dog touching the article?
I think it's up to the discretion of the judge.
I do not think it's like certain things in the rule book are an absolute number of points. I think that's going to be very much the interpretation of the judge and how much they think the dog is bothering that article. Like for me, if a dog comes and puts their nose right on top of it, if it's not bothering it, I don't know that I'm going to say, is he a millimeter off or is he on it? Like, can a judge even see that? Like, you'd have to business.
Yeah. I just saw a USA judge do it not too long ago. The dog was trained to put his nose on the article, and the judge dinged him at every article, and the handler said, "But I trained him to do that." And he said, "Well, you trained him wrong."
I would agree. Your dog should not touch the article, but I would also say the judge is also not supposed to be that close to the dog. So
yeah.
I don't know that you would always be able to tell if the dog was touching the article. So I think it's going to play out different ways depending on how much it looks like the dog's disturbing that article.
Of course.
And different judges.
Yeah.
But if it was me, I would train my dog not to touch the article in a way it was real clear to the judge he wasn't.
Absolutely.
No? Okay, next. Okay, general changes for the retrieves. This is the one people are excited about. the judge and the trial secretary are going to go out on the field and mark a box with paint or chalk for the mandatory landing spot of the dumbbells. Oh, I forgot to put my drawing in here. I had the dumbest drawing with little stick people, but that, did I write it out? I think I'm intended to put my drawing in. Sorry, folks. I wonder, I don't know if it's worth trying to send it to Christopher. I think I have it right here. No, I didn't take a picture. Never mind. I'll send it later. We can add it to the slides later. But it's a landing spot. I believe it's 2x8 on the wall and the, or 2x4. No, it's 2x8, isn't it? On the wall and the high jump, and it's like 4x4 on the flat. So we're going to draw it out there, and the handler has to throw it into that box. And if it doesn't land in the box, then an assistant is going to replace it. So we're going to mark it out, and you guys are going to try to hit it. Handlers who use the left arm may request to take a step to the right to throw. I imagine judges had allowed that all along. I'm not a lefty, but it is in the rules now. You can ask. It doesn't say the judge has to allow it, but it makes sense so you don't clock your dog in the head with a dumbbell. When you step back to basic, you need to have a 3-second pause. So it's still a little bit of a disadvantage in that the whole rigmarole is going to take a little bit more time. On the retrieve on the flat, you must stand at the start line that we put out there. On the wall and the high jump, you're allowed to stand behind the start line. So you can space that out more if your dog needs more distance for the jumps. So you're going to throw the dumbbell. If the dumbbell lands outside the box, an assistant will place the dumbbell in the center of the box. But it does not say if the dumbbell must be straight, like perpendicular, parallel to the wall, at an angle. It does not say. So I guess there will be some latitude there for the judges. You may see some people who want it parallel to the jump and some people who want it perpendicular, would be my guesses, but we'll see how it plays out. Another big change is the wall is going to be 160 centimeters for all levels. So they've lowered the wall. I'm already seeing some people saying that's making it more likely that dogs will get hurt. I'm sure depends on your dog. If the dog knocks over the hurdle during a jump, this is a strange set of rules. It says there's a deduction of 4 points for knocking it. If the dog manages to return with the dumbbell over the hurdle that's been thrown over, it earns 1 point. So I guess they're saying that it's minus 3 points total. If the return jump cannot be shown due to a knocked over hurdle, the exercise receives 0 points. So if your dog goes around the knocked over hurdle, you're done. It sounds like there's no resetting of the jumps anymore.
Right.
So, but I don't find that language incredibly clear. Because we don't usually talk about Schutzen earning 1 point. So we'll see how that all plays out. I think that might require a little clarification. Unless somebody else is confident that you think you know what that language means. Okay. The rules also specify the dog may sit or stand alongside the handler at the dumbbell stand. Some judge must have taken a point because some dog didn't sit at the dumbbell stand, I would guess. The rules just say the dog has to go with you to the dumbbell stand. Okay, next one. And Christopher, will you help remind me to throw that picture in?
Yep.
So I got a question about the dumbbell stand then, because this was always a gray area for me. So I believe in the rules it states that the dogs must sit every time you halt automatically. So do we have to stop at the dumbbell stand, or can we just grab the dumbbell and continue moving?
It says the dog has to stand. So the judge should no longer be judging whether or not, even if you stop at the stand, the judge should not be judging whether or not the dog sits there.
Okay. Do we have to stop at the stand, or can we grab it and go?
I think you'd be fine to grab it and go.
Okay.
That's my interpretation. It doesn't say you must halt. It just says your dog has to go with you there.
Yeah. Okay.
I've never lost points for just walking by and snatching the dumbbell as I go by.
Yeah.
But results may vary, you know?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
speak for all the.
Absolutely.
Okay, so changes to the IGP-1. In the obedience, you are allowed up to 5 seconds of praise. The dog can leave the basic, but remember the cost of any extra commands to get them back to basic. The sit and down exercises may be shown with a stop after the buildup, like in the BH. So they've expanded that allowance beyond the BH, which could be an advantage for some people. There's no retrieve over the jump. There's just the 2 jumps performed. When retrieving, the dog's name may be used instead of the verbal command for the recall. I thought this was a very weird thing because is anybody saying here on a recall? You say, hup, bring, or bring. There's no recall from a retrieve, right? Am I?
In the old rules, Dana, I think it told you what the commands were in.
I think the diff.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Good.
I'm sorry. I think the difference was, back in the day, it was the jump in the wall. The dog always had the dumbbell in the mouth, so you just told him, to hop, and then he grabbed it, and you told him to bring.
That's what's
so I think
is it says when should say when jumping, the dog's name may be used.
Yeah.
The recall. That's the confusion thing. Okay.
So it said in the BH rule, as I was reading along with you, that you could use the dog's name instead of a here command for the recall.
It's all along in various places where there were recalls. I think what changed now is that your jumps have become a recall because we don't have the retrieve. And I think
exactly.
When retrieve.
Yeah, so it's like hup here or hup Fido.
Yes. So you would say here or hup Fido, but you're not going to say bring here. And that's sort of what this looks like, but I don't think that's what this means. So, and again, for the IGP-1, the long down distance is only 10 meters and the handler can't stand sideways to the dog. So I think there have been some changes here that make for a little bit easier progression for people from the BH to the 1 to the 2. A little bit simpler than it was. Okay, next slide. Okay, we went back to having 2 blinds for the blind search and protection, which I'm very pleased about because it's very hard to know what I'm scoring if the blind search has 1 blind. Like, it's sort of a strange exercise. Now at least there's 2 blinds. Your dog has something to do before they come into the find blind. After the front half, the language in the rules don't say that, but that's what it means. After the front half, the helper moves 20 meters away at a normal pace. It used to be that the dog was heeled downfield away from the helper. And then on the judge's command, the helper begins the long attack. So we have to set the field up in a way that the helper can, after the front half, have space to move those 20 meters away. And the USCA rules said the helper runs 20 meters away. And I looked at that and I was like, what? This can't be true. And that is not what the language of the rule book says, thank God. Because if the helper ran 20 meters away, we'd have a very different test.
Yes.
The other thing was that my understanding at the last trial was that when you say helper step back and they step back, you have to wait until they have stepped back before you put your hand on your dog's collar in the normal manner for a long attack. You can't do it after you say sit. You can't hold the collar. You have to say step back.
See it in the rule book specifying a distance, but you're saying the helper has to have stepped back a certain distance before you begin treating it like a long bite?
That was, so we had one of our club members DQ'd for their 1 because she slipped her hand under the collar as she said step back.
Yep.
And the judge interpreted that to be that you have to wait for the helper to step back before you slip your hand under the collar.
Yeah, that sounds right to me.
Okay.
Okay, the tracking now has a 5-meter tracking line. So everybody has to buy a 5-meter tracking line and then a 10-meter tracking line. It does not say you can tie a knot in it or anything like that. So, and that also means your dog has a much smaller area to find the track. So I think people are not going to necessarily be thrilled with that change. And the judges, Dave and Christina and I were discussing it and saying, oh, they could use a 10-meter line if they want to. But when you actually read the rules, that is not what it says. It does not say you might choose a 5-meter tracking line. It says you will have a 5-meter tracking line. So I'm not sure that's a great advantage if your dog searches a little bit.
Mhm.
And I don't know how the judges will handle that. Maybe they'll let you follow them a little ways before you hit 10 meters off the track. I'm not sure. It also specifies that occasional short praise and encouragement on the track is permissible, but only when the handler follows the dog in a straight line and not in the range of corners, and not when the dog corrects a mistake or shows uncertainty, and not before indicating an article. So if it was me, I would not praise my dog on the track. There are too many caveats to when the judge is still going to take points. So
what is the range of corners? How many paces?
it doesn't say. But I mean, generally with the judging, you're saying like the corner is like 5 paces before and after or something like that. But it doesn't specify that. And is your dog showing uncertainty or correcting a mistake? Like,
Right.
sounds like you can only praise your dog when he's doing perfectly on the straight line, not, you know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't praise my dog with that set of caveats.
So basically, thank God is not an appropriate praise.
Right in the middle of the, oh yeah, thank God. No, you could just say God. Anyway, it's sort of allowed, but I'm gonna go with it's just a terrible idea.
Okay.
IGP2 changes. We no longer have a retrieve over the wall. It's just a recall over the wall. And the exercise is now only 10 points. When jumping, the dogs, I wonder if I changed that language to when jumping instead of when retrieving and just missed it on the other one. I think I might have. I'd have to go back and look in the book. But when jumping, the dog's name may be used instead of the verbal command for the recall, which makes a lot more sense. The stand exercise is now 10 points. And the long down distance is 20 meters, and the handler stands with their back to the dog, but not out of sight. There is no changes in the tracking and the protection. IGP3, the sit exercise is 10 points. The retrieve over the wall is 10 points. So we moved some points from the wall to the sit. The long down distance is 30 meters out of sight. No changes to tracking and protection. The advanced tracking titles have kind of gotten renamed, but I don't think there's really substantive changes to the track. So this IFH1 was the V where the handler lays it themselves, right?
Yep.
And is it identical, Christopher?
I'm sorry?
Is it identical to the V? Is there any change at all? I don't think there's a change.
I don't see the V on here or anything close to
The
the
V
V.
was from 2020, where the handler laid their own track.
I don't know. I never
I
did
judged
that.
it once, and I'm not positive about the age. Maybe the age used to be 60 minutes, but it's very similar in any case. So now it's the IFH1. You lay it yourself. The FH2 is the first stranger laid big track. And I think it's very much the same as the IFH1 used to be. Now, and then we have the
Yes.
F3, which used to be the 2.
Yep.
And then we have the IGP FH, which has 2 of the 3 tracks. And it used to be called, what did you say it was? The IPO F8?
Yeah, something like, I don't remember.
Used to be the same kind of a title where you did 2 tracks on 2 different days,
Yeah,
but renamed things. And the prerequisites will be, what, if you have a FH2 in your scorebook from 2020, that kind of becomes an FH3. If you have an FH1 in your scorebook from 2020, that is really an FH2 according to these rules. So it's going to be a little confusing for judges and secretaries to clarify the prerequisites. But I'm pretty sure that they'll be honored.
yeah. So if you have a FH1 now, you can go in and compete as a IFH3.
Think so.
Yeah, no, that's what it said earlier in your presentation.
What I thought it
Or
said
maybe I was looking at something else earlier when we were talking.
FH2 from the old rules, it counts as now the FH3.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, it did say something somewhere about the prerequisites. Christopher and I have done this twice today, I think.
And that's it.
Okay, so next slide.
That's it, Dana.
Oh, that's it? There's
Yeah.
nothing. Okay. Does anybody have questions from within these slides or just questions in general about the judging? And do we have any other judges? Did Les or Christina or anybody show up? No. No, Dave said he couldn't make it.
I see Ray Wisner.
Oh, is he?
Hmm.
Okay. Retired Judge Ray is here. Right? That's
Yep.
who we're, yeah, okay. Okay, does anybody have other questions? Strategies, point loss? I don't want to tell people how to train their dogs, but
So I have
Oh.
a question. I have a question just in general about the protection phase. And I know USCA had in their bylaws that you could not live in the same household and be the helper in a trial. Meaning, your wife couldn't show her dog and then you be the helper in the trial.
just looking at this, and it was very limited what is in the rules. And then I had people tell me, well, it's just not done and it would be in bad form to do this, that, or the other. But I think we have a rule book for a reason.
Absolutely.
So if it's not in the rules, we shouldn't be enforcing it. If you feel like you can't do your job, what was, it's not independent.
Impartially.
Yeah, impartially. If you feel like you can't do your job impartially, then you probably shouldn't.
Yeah.
But what I see in the rule book is all trials can be attended by a helper who lives in the same household as one of the handlers.
Can be attended or can.
I think they mean worked, because it's in a section. Let me see what the section is. It's on page 64 and it's in the protection section, helper regulations. And it says all trials can be attended, which I think means worked by a helper who lives in the same household. And likewise, hold on one second. There's another section about judges. Judges are not permitted to judge dogs that are owned by him or her, or are in his or her possession, dogs whose owners reside with him or her, or dogs that are owned by another person of the same household. So the judge can't have somebody, it can't be living with that dog and judge it, but it doesn't say I can't judge people in my club. And I'm not even sure it doesn't say I can't judge family members who don't live with me. So I think if you want to work a club trial and your family members in your club, it looks to me like it's allowed. Does anybody have a different interpretation, or is there another section that doesn't say house that I missed? I'm just doing a quick search. And just for perspective, this kind of came up with me recently where one of my club members was talking about doing a BH. We don't have very many trials in Arizona. And
Yeah.
our trial season's just about over. So I'm judging soon, and one of my club members said in fact, I think they knew about the trial before me and they were already planning to go. And then I was going to judge it. And then I read through this. There's not a conflict. And for me personally, I'm not going to have a problem judging somebody for a BH. That's pass fail. I'm not breaking a rule. And I don't think any chance that anybody's going to say, oh, that was unfair how you let that person pass their BH. I think I would have a much bigger problem if that person was there with their Schutzen 3 dog that's going to win high in trial in every phase, and I'm the judge. Personally, I would say, can't you just find another trial? Because even though I know you're going to win every phase, it's not going to look good when I'm your judge and you train with me every weekend. So I think that could be a consideration too. If the person living in your household has a really badass dog, it might make you look like you're trying to help them.
Yeah.
So you probably have to make that call yourself, and you can, talk within your club what they feel comfortable with. Does anybody have any other guidelines on that, or any other judges' perspectives that you've heard?
Mhm.
Okay.
Dana, we have something in the chat from Tammy.
Okay.
I don't know when Tammy put it on here or not, but it says, I don't think it's the same. FCI obedience historically didn't have fronts, for example, unless that has changed.
It does say in that section that your dog can go to front or straight to basic, I believe.
I'm not sure. Tammy, could you fill us in?
She here?
Yeah, see her up there.
Okay.
Okay, maybe she doesn't want to talk or doesn't have the
Well,
ability.
yeah, I don't have the answer for sure either. I was hoping somebody else did.
All right.
Okay.
Hey, Dana, I have a question. It's kind of shifting gears here. Regarding the jump. Now, I know you had kind of said with the new rules, if the dog comes back over the jump, when it's been knocked over, they still get some points, versus if they don't come back over when it's knocked down, no points. Is there anything else in the rules about the type of jump? Because if I was putting on a trial, I'd probably want a more solid or stable jump so that there's less odds of kind of knocking it all the way down. But is there equipment focus in the rules now?
I don't believe it's specified that the jump has to be solid or not solid. Anybody? Did you notice?
No, I haven't seen anything.
I don't think it said one way or the other. And those rules are strange because to me as a judge, like if your dog knocks over the jump, he can't jump. And then when he comes back over, he still can't jump because there's no jump there. So how do I evaluate it? So I need to talk to other judges about what those rules are really saying.
Yeah, it's a very interesting one. I did see, not to put him on the spot, but I did see that Kin joined as well.
Maybe
So
he has perspective there. Yeah, I mean, he doesn't have to join in if he doesn't want to say. But as a judge, if your dog can't do that jump, how do you come out with only -3 points? I don't think it says what.
Okay, cool. I was just curious because I've been seeing a lot of focus on like the breakaway jumps or those kind of things recently, but I wasn't sure if that's a requirement in the rules now.
Not read that as a requirement anywhere. I did not notice it. I think I would have, since we've always had those solid jumps. So I was really looking for things that changed.
Okay.
But the rule book had so many changes, it was not an easy task. So I'll take a note to look later. I'll let you know if I find anything later.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Uh-huh. Any other ones?
On the IGP1 jumps over the hurdle, do you have to stay to the outside? Can you cross in front of your dog? Or do you have to stay to the outside to go to the other side for a recall?
It did not specify. So if it was me, I would ask the judge judging that particular trial, if they had any guidelines. I would say if it doesn't specify, you can get to the other side any way you want.
That's kind of what I was wondering, but having watched many Mondio trials, you can't cross in front of your dogs. So that's why it came to my mind.
Yeah, and in Mondio, it's considered blocking, like you're purposely crossing in front to stop them from going.
Breaking.
Yeah.
Yes, but if it doesn't specify in the rules and you're a smart handler, you might take that advantage, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I would just double check with your judge and see if they have a different perspective.
Okay, thanks.
All right, Ray, you're up. Well, okay. Does anybody else have any questions, comments, criticisms, etc.?
Christopher, you had a couple good questions earlier. Should we cover those, or are people done?
Which questions did I have? I don't know which ones you
You already
thought
forgot how
were good.
No, you were just saying that you thought people might want to hear about where do I see people losing points a lot.
Oh, yeah, that
Oh,
was
yes.
pretty much the question.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a couple things I see that always make me scratch my head. One is fixing fronts and finishes. You only lose more points by changing your front and your finish. If your dog's 90 degrees crooked, leave it. You're not going to help yourself by giving an extra command because your dog already made the mistake of having a crooked front or finish. And now on top of it, you're going to lose a 1.5 for an extra command. And you think about that in how you train, because your dog has to hit that position the first time, and anything that happens after that point is just making a bigger mess. Another one that always fascinates me is I have yet to see a dog come out that didn't heal better off leash than on leash. So leave your dogs alone on that leash. I don't know what you're doing. Your dogs look better without it there. So people should think about that. I can't say what's going on in the training, but the leashes come off and the dogs look much better. Handler help, of course, and everybody knows that. You're constantly doing handler help when you're not aware that you're doing handler help. And I think the best remedy for that is videoing yourself and going and watching. Was there anything else I said, Christopher?
Not that I remember.
Okay.
Anybody else? Last call. Get your questions in.
I've got a question about the tracking again, one more time.
Go ahead, Steve.
And it was mainly about the scent pad. Is there a certain number of points just for that scent pad, just taking the scent?
No, and tracking 21, different judges judge it in very different ways. So if you might ask friendly judges to show you how they tracking. Some people take the whole track as like one exercise and say, well, that was very good.
Yeah.
And other
I remember training with, back in the day, a German guy, and he was telling me, the scent pad itself is 7 points. And I was like, where does it say that? You know? And he's like, I think it's 7 points, and he's like, you got to train that scent pad, for them to stay on the, and I was like, well, I've never seen any scent pad nationals, so I'm not going to stay here all day.
Well, I never agreed with that when I was a competitor, and I didn't agree with it as a judge. Like, there's always been a very strange fascination with the scent pad, in my opinion, and in my judging, that's not something I'm pointing as a particular exercise. It's part of your first leg.
I understand.
If your dog's going into the beginning of the track hectic and fast and not concentrated and careful, you can kind of guess that the whole thing's not going to go great. But you don't have to point the scent pad. You can point all the rest of it that didn't go great. Plenty of points to take in the rest of the track too,
Yeah, absolutely. I want to thank you for spending time with us this evening and sharing your knowledge, for sure.
For sure. I appreciate being a part of the club and having a chance to serve. I've really enjoyed being able to get out there and judge. I'm looking forward to meeting more of you guys in person.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks, Dana. Can I piggyback off Steve's question? Actually, the scent pad thing reminded me of something. What about tracking up to the scent pad? Like the couple steps
The
those
rules
dogs have start.
specify it is not faulty for your dog to track up to the scent pad. They can sniff their way to it, but do not say sook until your dog is at the flag.
Gotcha.
Otherwise, they're going to take points for that. And I don't think anybody was pointing the dogs for sniffing up to the scent pad.
Yeah, my buddy Jules, he's on here tonight, and he went to a tracking certification last weekend. I think it was USCA organization, you know, of course. But, you know, that's one of the things that he gathered from it, that the dog can track all he wants to up until that flag, but you cannot give that command until that dog gets to that flag, you know, or there's a point loss.
That's correct.
And you went to get certified as a track layer?
Yes.
Oh, that's great, because we were just talking about that. AWMA doesn't have certified track layers. So I'd
So
be
within
Hmm?
so within the first 2 meters, your dog could put his nose down,
Mhm.
6 feet out, but not until he reaches that flag can you give him the command to track.
Well,
So
So
when
maybe I'll reach out to you later and find out what they did for your track layer certification, because it seems interesting.
okay.
Yeah, that's all changed starting the track, because before you were able to stand within a meter of the starting flag, give the command to take the start, to take the scent pad and continue on. And back when I was judging, anyway, in the 90s.
Yeah, I don't think this rule existed before this 2020 rules that said
So now I've got to make sure I wait till my dog's at that scent pad in the flag before I say the command. That's all.
yep.
Right. He can put his nose down and start tracking, but you can't
Sure.
give the command to track until he gets to the flag, to the scent pad itself.
But we used to always give the command prior to that,
Yeah.
and then the dog would take the scent pad, at the flag and continue. So yeah, that is a change for a lot of us older folk.
Yep.
All right, good. I know how to use that speaking thing now. Thank you. Good meeting you all.
Thanks for coming, Ware.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else?
All right, let's wrap it up. I want to thank everybody for coming. Dana, thank you for presenting.
Yes.
Well done. Thank you for those of you that showed up, and especially those that participated, asking some questions.
Yeah, it was
Nice
really
chance.
Where's the mom? Yeah, thanks
All
again.
right.
Thanks again. It was very informational. Thanks for everybody putting it on, and the host and the whole 9 yards. We appreciate it.
All right.
a nice idea. I appreciate Shannon or the executive board or whoever had this idea. I love the idea that we're communicating more with all of our membership and giving everybody a chance to learn new things. It's great.
Cool. All right. So we're going to wrap it up, guys. Thanks for participating. We're going to have these, we're going to try to do these on a regular basis.
Yep. Aim for monthly.
And if
May might be weird just because we have FMBB and AWDF.
Oh,
but if you guys have any suggestions for people that would like to do one of these, please hit me up or Shannon and put us in contact with them. Doesn't matter who they are, what they are. We want to hear from everybody. They don't have to be here in the US either.
Yeah.
All right. All right, guys. Thank you very much for coming, and I'll see you next month.
okay. Thanks.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.